Good to see you all back. A couple extras here. We'll draft you into the thing. You'll figure it out real quick. First of all, did anybody who had coffee this morning? Anybody also have toast this morning? Oh, you're part of the illustrious group that had coffee and toast?
We did.
Did you have it on a machine that looked like this?
I did not.
That also, this is the one I like the most, that you can also plug your iPhone in. Those of you that weren't here yesterday, it was part of this thing that illustrated when you have a closed mind about things. There were people saying the iPhone will never catch on, and they were comparing it to a toaster with a coffee machine. So yesterday we covered a whole lot of material. You remember at the beginning when you were first in there, we talked about outreach and culture and how those two things played off one another. We did that what we call the arm wrestle game that illustrated that the way you think is going to have a bearing on your behaviors then. If you think certain thoughts, remember we had different ideas about that game where we went like this. That's going to have a bearing on your behavior.
I have a bruise, by the way.
Do you? So then we looked at the calendars, and we at least just got a visual, or at least it allowed us to think about the balance between outreach and equipping the saints. And then after that we played the bridge game, which illustrated well, right? Like the more people actually just sharing the gospel, the better it works. What else did we do? We also did, we took a look at that wheelbarrow illustration, and that got us thinking about two different approaches to ministry as you think about a curious approach and a judgmental approach. That was a good exercise. And then finally the last thing that we looked at yesterday, let's see, there's 2 spots there. Good enough? In the last lesson that we looked at yesterday, we looked at that accountability ladder. And we looked at reasons, the things that keep us from doing the outreach that we want to do even. I don't think there's anybody in here that's like, boo, outreach. You all want that to get done. That's why we send even money overseas to mission work. We want the gospel to get out. But sometimes there's those things on that accountability ladder that keep us from doing the things that we know and that we want to do. So that's what we looked at yesterday. It was maybe a little bit of a fire hose that was pushed on you yesterday. The thing that I asked you to do, as you left yesterday, to identify an outreach partner. You're going to sit next to your outreach partner in there as well. We're going to try to get through 2 sessions and be done by 11 today. We'll see. That was what I was told I have to do. Pick whoever it is. It's going to be your spouse today. If you want to rethink that later, you can do that later. But for now, I want you sitting next to your outreach partner. So that's true of everybody here? Good. So, as it is no surprise, I think I told you this yesterday, what I want you to do is, the more parents share with your outreach partner, I asked you to contemplate and think about the things that were most impactful that you heard yesterday, the things that were that struck you the most. I want you to turn and share with your outreach partner the things that struck you the most yesterday, and go ahead and share that, and then I'll let you know when we'll switch. Let's draw this to the front and let everybody else glean from the insights, the things that were most impactful, the most memorable for you. Who will share? What were the things that were most meaningful? Mike?
Well, I'm going to take credit because he said that's the most insightful thing I've heard.
So this is self-promotional. Let's hear it.
Right. So when you're trying to get, because what I say is we need more bridge builders. How do you get more bridge builders? Don't tell them how to go do something. Tell them what you want to accomplish, and do it any way you want then. But you know, Larry, we need to go see 100 new families this year. I'm not going to tell you how to do it. I'm not going to say go canvassing, just everybody, we need to go, and that's a goal. We set them a goal, now they go figure out how to do it. Because, as we said yesterday, everybody has their own strengths, their own way of wanting to do things. And they might, if you say, I need you to go canvassing, they're going to say, I do not do canvassing, right?
Yeah. No, that's great. So there's got to be measurables, but how you accomplish those measurables isn't necessarily ironclad defined.
Right.
Great, thank you. Who else? Kathy, you had one?
We said the curiousness of a child is what we want to be, instead of being judgmental and keep our old person thinking. We want to have that curiosity. I like that.
Yeah, excellent. That was profound when I went through that wheelbarrow exercise the first time. Just to, oh yeah. Who else will share? Karen?
Just kind of that we're all in the same boat, and we have a lot of the same obstacles that keep us from getting outside our comfort zone, and so that whole idea, I kind of am back to the same, just introducing ourselves and starting with a conversation and being on purpose with that. See, we can kind of have that in the back of our minds, but when we get together with a group like this, then we start to really kind of change our focus, and it becomes more important, so it goes to the front of our brain, and it's like, okay, we're gonna be more intentional. And so I think that that's probably the thing for me, because, and the other thing, this doesn't really have to do with yesterday, but we realized, at least Amanda and I, that the reason we're here is because Ruth, Jerry, and Lynn just hounded us constantly.
Sounds about
And so that personal invitation, we can't advertise things by just posting it somewhere. You have to have the personal invitation to things. And what Amanda was saying is, with her friend group, which is a very big portion of the moms that don't go to this school, they're looking for churches that are doing things and showing their faith through their interaction with the community. So they love the things like churches that have, like that one in St. Germain, the pre-K stuff, and then they have the Bible class, or Vacation Bible School. We used to have, Easter for Kids. They love churches that participate in, the community.
I think that was a drum that you were beating a little bit. To sum it all up, though, it's long gone are the days probably where people just out of habit, out of cultural pressure, belonged to a church and went to a church.
Mm-hmm.
It has something to do with a social interaction. So, I think we talked about yesterday, and I mentioned this, the fastest growing churches in our synod has nothing to do with worship style, actually. It's the high church, processional cross, clerical collar guy, and on the other side, the praise band. It's very little to do, but what is kind of common to those churches is it be the pastor or the people. They're some of the things you were talking about. They're good at connecting with people, and that's a big thing. So thank you, Jerry.
And what was most meaningful or impactful, I guess, I didn't recognize that until this morning. Is we have been a church, and Pastor Odell brought this up, that how many people are different than like 5 years ago, I think he said, right, Pastor, or something to that effect?
Oh, yeah.
So 5 years ago we did the book called Tactics, and we had it with a book and videos, and not that we agreed with everything, we did not, our pastor did not, and he pointed those things out of Kokel's interpretation of the gospel, the good news. But we've been this has been, and it was pointed out to me here, that this has been a goal of our church, is to, how do we approach the sinner? And that book, Tactics, I mean, we already been through that. I think it would be a good idea, now that it all came to fruition this morning, for us to continue a Bible study similar to that again, because we do have such a turnover or a refreshment of our congregation.
Yeah, thank you. By the way, just my observation, I realize I'm a son of the congregation, but it's not like, there's a few faces that I recognize, but not all that many more. It's a little bit of a foreign congregation to me now. I think it is a friendly congregation. I think your pastor does a great job of putting forward the importance of those social connections, that it's not just about consuming spiritual material, but God had some good ideas when he said, let us not give up meeting together, as some are in the habit of doing, but that coming together and making an appointment with one another is encouragement from that, and we need that. So thank you. Anybody else? Who else will share?
The most impactful thing for me yesterday was the Acts scriptures that we read.
Oh,
I thought it was very insightful that we don't need new equipment or just one more year of Bible study so I can get to know just a little bit more of the scriptures. Basically, I just need myself, I need the gospel, and I need someone to listen, be willing to listen to
Awesome.
it, you know.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's kind of what you were saying too, right? That is impactful, that you can come up with all these mental blocks or reasons on a personal level or on a congregational level, but ultimately I can just go be friendly to somebody, and that's something I can do. Anyone else? All right, so, go ahead.
I was just gonna
Yeah.
say, this came from some conversation after, not during our sessions, but after, so somebody else in another session mentioned just the urgency. I mean, we were kind of touching on that with that everybody you meet is a soul, but the urgency of this is amazing. And if we put it kind of in that framework, I think that you finally have to kind of let down all your objections. That was very, very impactful to me.
That's such a hard thing to remember, right? Because even for a guy who's in the Word of God all the time, I've got to get my CMOs in, and I've got to get the worship folder together. And those are all important things. They're part of a ministry. But regardless, that urgent souls are on the line is what are on. That's such a hard thing to remember. And so the accountability thing, I think, is a good thing for helping us to remember that. Anyone else? All right. So the other thing I asked you to do as you came in this morning is to try to be a fish out of water as best you could. Did you have any observation as you tried to put your visitor hat on and think about, as I pulled up to the church, as I walked into the church, the service, the mile-long line of
There
coffee
wasn't
and
a
the
mile
donuts?
long line today.
What's that?
I walked right up to the cup.
And then talked for 10 minutes.
Behind me.
He butted in right in front of the only guest we had.
I actually noticed your dad this morning, because I'll tell you what, even though he knows me, he went and talked to the gentleman that was here, he isn't here today, that was from Michigan. It's part of
He's
the
right
group.
over here.
He's over here.
Oh, is he?
Oh.
Yeah, I talked to him this morning, but Jerry is like that. So
Yeah, he
I
is.
kind of would like to get to that point one day. But I see that about our church, that there is so many friendly people. When we came the first time, they were very friendly here.
Good. That's awesome. Yeah. What else? Gary?
I was just gonna mention, there was no greeter at the door today, like usually there is. So it almost brought me to tears.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. You look like a sensitive guy, Gary. Anybody else?
Paperclip thing, we don't need the mechanics of all these committees to have a hierarchy of administration to figure out how to do this. It's just giving people what we're doing now, the individuals to. We do need a outreach committee to guide
Steer
things,
us.
sure, but this is where it's at.
Yeah, not to do the work, to maybe create a philosophy, to give some direction,
Help
but not to.
people do their work.
They're not the ones that we farm the work to,
Right.
right? Yeah, good observation. Anything else that you observed this morning, just as you tried to think about it from a visitor's perspective? Oh, Doug?
If I were a first-time visitor, and I'm close to one, impossible place to find parking. That's what?
Big enough, right? Across the street, or?
Somewhat. A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit of
Right.
that's all. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
I drove up as a first-timer today, also noticed there was no greeter, which personally doesn't bother me. And then afterwards, there are a bunch of people I don't know. And other days, I've gravitated toward the people I do know, and I know them forever. And I just talk with them and kind of look at the other people. Why not? I should do this. This morning, I went and I met at least 5 other people I didn't know. I think from a perspective, I saw everybody. I didn't see anybody standing alone. And I would take that as a welcome.
Awesome.
And I get to be part of it because I intentionalized it. Otherwise, I probably would just talk to Karen.
Dan?
As a actual real first time visitor here at your church, I'm here because I work with Synod and I just started, and I'm observing everyone outreach here this weekend. But as a first time visitor, actually, I counted both before, and we came early. We got here at 7:30, and after, both before and after, 8 people came up to us before and after, which was why I was late to get in the room, because people were talking to me. But none of those 8 people talked about Christ with me and the gospel message, but they all deliberately connected with me in some way that left me thinking, I want to come back and talk with that person some more. So I walk away with that impression from the congregation, which is outstanding.
That's awesome to hear.
There's 2 entrances into church, kinda, and, well, yeah, there are, because I went to the right and there were no bulletins there, and I go, oh, shoot. So I went back to the other one where they were passing out bulletins, and I just thought to myself, well, that's kind of it's logistical, but it just made me think, am I supposed to go in that door? I don't know if I go in that door, because I was gonna sit on the far right, then, but there's no bulletins, maybe I was, I'm just.
No, I think the congregation wants to hear those. Like, we've been saying some positive things about how Big Friendly is, but I think it's also helpful to hear, are there any things that would seem confusing to a visitor?
That was confusing.
That's good to
But
hear.
I knew it.
We have 3 ushers.
One on the other side.
You don't need 3.
Well, this is probably not, it's overanalyzing what would be good for a visitor. If you're coming like Jerry that wasn't familiar with Wells liturgy and all that, there's a number of things in the service that, harder scripture, they're gonna be like, man, I was hoping for, something that I had heard before or saw in a TV movie. But, there's a line in one of the, which one was it? It's like a line of prosperity gospel, which could be interpreted that way. And then it comes with full gospel to refute that. And if there's a few other things in there that were confusing, contradictions, the whole wages and things. We know God has his own, like Pastor eloquently explained, his own standards and when does he, let someone die. You work for a half hour, an hour, you get paid the same as somebody who's worked 12-hour shift. Somebody's gonna go, what kind of religion is this, or what kind of God is that? I was thinking maybe at the end of the service, if we had people, we get really equipped. Say, if anyone's a visitor or something, if you had any questions about the service or anything you experienced here today, we'd love to have you back. But pastor obviously is always available to talk to people. They should know that, but if there are other people, those of us who grew up in the church and have doctrines straight and all that, it might be a good thing for visitors, because I know I've been, I visited churches I had to, and I know pretty much all the different faiths and why they do it, but you can get confused. I remember my cousin's wedding once, we had to go to it, and it was Methodist church, and they had communion as part of the wedding ceremony. And you had some of the groomsmen who hadn't been to church, obviously, they're up there doing communion, like they're shooting shots back at the bar at 2 a.m. And we didn't participate. But I don't know, just a thought, maybe, I don't know how we do that and who would be volunteering to do it. Someone like Doug probably has experience or something.
Sounds like you just volunteered yourself.
I would.
Yeah.
I'll be the first to sign up. If
Those are good things to think about. How you, because the worship service is both meant to be blue and orange. How do you? I always, you ever hear the John Madden, the football announcer? That's pastor's talk for John Maddening something is when you get up to do like a Bible reading and you give half a sermon before the Bible reading. That's called John Maddening it. So my brother and I always argue about that. About how much to John Madden. Oh, my brother does it worse. He does. He'll John Madden the thing, for a couple minutes.
To that point?
What?
To that point? Who wins on that argument? What side are you on?
I have vacillated back and forth on a personal level. Between, I used to John Madden it quite a bit too, and then I went, like the pendulum often does as it swings, it never settles in the middle where it ought to. I was too far on this side, and then I said, you know what, I'm just like overshadowing a little bit of the transcendence of just letting the word be. I'm just going to put a few announcements, and then I kind of came back to the middle, and I half John Madden it now, so that's where I'm at.
And the reason is there's going to be a personal preference.
Yeah. All right. Let's just hear two of the I wills that some of you wrote. Who will share? Bill?
Well, I guess, kind of what Doug was saying, he and I probably disagree on that last point about helping educate, or how we educate, not how. But I was gonna say, I'm gonna try to be, because I usually think I'm right on most things, as a lot of us do. And we all, I've learned through everybody here, we all have.
I obviously don't concur.
That's one thing we can agree on. But the worship styles and things you talk about, who wants, and today we had a little bit of both. We had one of the Baptist hymns that had 25 refrains and the same thing, and some people love that, some don't. We had the traditional hymn where I thought the congregation really started singing louder, at least I was in the back row. But we're all going to differ on what style worship. We're going to differ on whether to have ushers at each door or greeters, or but I'm going to try to be more patient. That's maybe going to be my number one thing. I'm not always patient in my own mind with listening. As a family, we've got to be more of a family, respect the opinions of everybody, but come up with that compromise and goals going forward. We got to somehow reach that middle of the ground where we're all on the same boat.
And the way to do that, if you want to go read 1 Corinthians, right? The situation in the church at that time was some of that same thing, male, female, Greek, slave, rich, poor. And Paul's whole point is these are all secondary things. Not that you don't want to discuss the wisdom of these things, but they shouldn't divide the people. You discuss the wisdom of it, and then going forward, the thing that still unites us, miles above any of these things that separate us, is Christ and our calling into His family. And so that ought not stifle conversation. It just means that the things that divide us ought not divide us. Right? And so that's a good point. That's a good point. One more. Who will share? And I will say.
Well, I just put outreach more in the forefront, kind of what Karen was saying, it's always in the back of my mind, well, I gotta get it in the front of my mind. And find those opportunities, and like you were saying yesterday, well, if I trip over myself a little bit here and there, whatever, but just get it out there and look for those opportunities more, and put the foot on the gas, because there's souls to save. The urgency, I think, is what you just said. I think that's important.
Yeah. All right. Let's just take like a 3-minute break. So, at like 7. I want to have you start the session by opening your journals to page 9. And on page 9, I have a list of reasons that people felt unwelcomed at church. And it is your job, I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to do this, it is your job to place a check mark into those boxes whether you think these are real reasons that people felt unwelcome at church or whether it is a made up. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes. Go ahead and do that.
Excuse me. Made up like they're making it up, or
I made this up.
You made it
Yes.
up? Okay.
So are these real things that occurred, and I can tell you real stories based on this, or did I make these up?
Okay.
Who thought political bumper stickers is real? Who thinks made up? Made up? All right. Who thinks wanting Christmas decorations a certain way is real?
I do. I think some people.
Who thinks that one was made up? 4, 5, 6 made up. All right. Closed communion. Who thinks that one was real? Made up? Yeah. That's probably self-evident. How about cheering for an NFL team? Who thinks that one was real? Who thinks that one was made up? Probably more think that was made up. Okay. Passing offering plates. Who thinks that one was real? Who thinks that one was made up? 3. Having greeters at the door. Who thinks that one was real? Okay. Who thinks that one was made up? Let's say half and half on that one. Maybe a little more towards made up. A note in the bulletin that says if you are interested in participating in our school's annual golf outing, contact Mark Schmidt. Who thinks that one was real?
It's too dumb to be.
Too dumb to be real?
To not be.
Well, not real. Oh, okay.
Too dumb to be
6, 5,
made
6.
up.
Who thinks that one is made up? Most of you think that one's made up. Must be a member to set up coffee. Who thinks that one is real? Most of you think that one is real. Who thinks that one is made up? All right, 4, 5, 6. Asking a visitor to stand and be recognized after the service. Who thinks that one is real? Most of you. Who thinks that one was made up? All right. Mike, you were right. They're all real. They're all real. Political bumper stickers. So there was a church, an occasion one time. These aren't all stories that I personally encountered, but in putting together this presentation, different guys they curated some of these stories. But there was a congregation one time where there were new visitors, and they pull up into the parking lot, and they asked the pastor. They said, "Pastor, do you have to be a Republican to belong to this church?" He's like, "Why?" He's like, "Because all of the bumper stickers are Republican." Okay. Wanting Christmas decorations a certain day. Certainly, there was an occasion where they were new members, and the pastor asked them if they would set up the Christmas decorations in the narthex area, and the lifelong members came in and saw that the decorations were set up the wrong way. And so that Saturday they rearranged all the decorations, and then the new members came back on Sunday and went, "What? Did we do something wrong here? Closed communion. That one is maybe self-evident, but I will say this. This is a general truism. A lot of Christians and non-members are glad that we don't ask them to participate in walking up front and being cannibals where we eat blood and drink body. It's usually like some of the ELCA members. I'm generalizing here, but it's often members of maybe Methodist churches, some of the Reformed churches that really find issue with it. But a lot of times people who have very little exposure to Christianity, they're often appreciative of the fact that we're not asking them to do something that they don't know anything about. So not as much as you sometimes get the impression that that's always this big offense. Not as much as you think. Cheering for an NFL team. Down south in Texas or Florida, when you have a whole congregation of people wearing Packer jerseys, right? Because there are all these transplants from Wisconsin, and visitors walk in and go, "What kind of cult is this?" And they're all wearing Packer jerseys down, in a state where they're not even Packer. They're not supposed to be Packer fans.
Wisconsin City, man.
Yeah, exactly right. Passing the offering plates, you can imagine. If you're completely unaffiliated with the church, you're brand new to the whole thing, and these golden casserole dishes come, and she said, what are the people putting in there? I don't have one of those little white things that everybody just put in there. Am I not part of the club? I mean, you're labeled outsider if you don't have a little white piece of paper to put in the golden casserole dish that comes passing by. Having greeters at the door. Somebody mentioned this. We talked about this a little bit. Congregations kind of fall down on two sides of this. If you have greeters, wonderful, the people get greeted. Inadvertently, if you're coming back to the bridge game, that's the greeter's job. And so people pick up on that real quick, like, oh, they're not really friendly, they just farm out friendliness to a set of people that are supposed to do this. That is true. Why do you think this might have labeled somebody as an outsider?
They don't know who Mark is.
Yeah, if you don't know who Mark Schmitz is, right, you're like instantly labeled as an outsider. Like, who's Mark Schmitz? Or Schmidt? Must be a member to set up coffee?
Oh, yeah. That's how we do it here. You don't have training in coffee.
For very good reasons, the Bible emphasizes the importance of fellowship, that we communicate, or that we don't communicate, that we're not united in faith when we aren't. That's not to marginalize people. It's just because the gospel is so important. We don't want to compromise that. But this is kind of the extreme, right? This is not any. If I ask some new people, some visitors, some people that have been visiting us that are not members of the church, if I ask them to make some coffee, am I really communicating a watered down compromise of the gospel? Not really, right? No, yes, this is something that has little to do. If you wanted to be absolutely extreme, we would disbar all, we wouldn't say, thank you for joining us for worship, because we'd be communicating that we're somehow united. There's a middle ground on all of these things, and you don't need to be a member to set up coffee. Asking visitors to stand and be recognized, that might be self-evident to us here in the north. Interestingly, in the south, that is a practice, and if you don't ask visitors to stand and be recognized, like in some of the Baptist churches down there, they would be offended because you didn't acknowledge them. And I think most of us up here would go, I'm mortified that you put the spotlight on me, but not down there. So anyway, yes, they are all real. Let's debrief on this a little bit. Who determines whether or not something is unwelcoming?
The person that feels unwelcome.
Yeah.
The guest does.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do. Who determines if that unwelcoming item or issue is changed in any sort of way? The host. Yeah, exactly. By the way, which of these things, which of the things on here are non-negotiable? That's the only one, right? All these other things, you can weigh whether or not they're good ideas, but the only...
It's going to be really hard, though, to get, if everybody's got a bumper sticker, or are you going to say, okay, from now on, no NFL jerseys at church?
No, you're right, but at least to have the knowledge that if this is, and I don't know that it is, but if it is a stumbling block in some sort of a way, at least it's on the table as something that we can discuss changing. And if that happens once, maybe not, but if it happens again and again, where the impression is given, and this one, the more and more, I don't want to get into commentary, but the more and more there's a political divide, the more and more leery our people, at least ought to be, that if you end up on one side or the other, you are out of hand, written off. Right? There's no conversation explaining what you believe, why you believe. That's an important thing to be careful about. You're on the enemy team, and I don't care what's coming out of your mouth from here on out, because you're on the wrong side of the political aisle.
This is a bit of a tangent off of that, but just I have found, I like politics, and I'm very comfortable in, talking my faith. However, I found that that's actually, a lot of people yesterday were talking about bridging the gap between friendly conversation and deeper spiritual things. Politics can be that thing.
The friendly thing or the deeper thing?
The bridge.
Oh.
Because, for example, I've struck up conversations with people who are my neighbors, who have yard signs or signs in their windows that are obviously different from what I believe. But I don't have to go and say, how can you believe that? I can ask in a very legitimate, sincere way. And I had this with my neighbor across the street from me, and he was kind of taken aback, but in a nice way. We were going to vote. And I said, I think our votes are going to cancel each other out today. I said, well, you know what? I'd love to get to know you a little bit, because I really enjoy getting to know people who are different from me and understanding where you're coming from. And like, once you take that humble mindset and allow them to talk and you're willing to listen, then people might want to hear what you're about. You don't have, anyway, I'm just saying it's one of the things that can bridge instead of being a thing that divides.
Yeah, I think the one thing to keep in mind is, ask yourself the question, are people going to get the impression that I'm trying to save the soul of America or save souls?
Oh, totally.
Right, and those are two different things. People get fired up about saving the soul of America, and the wrong impression is given. No, I've got my political ideas, but I'm trying to save souls.
And the only reason I do that is because in the course of eventually when I get a chance to talk about what I believe or why I believe, then my faith is part of that, right? Like I hear your whole worldview, which is totally integrated, and then I get a chance to share my worldview, and I don't care about converting you there. I care about your heart,
right?
And I can share my heart with you.
But I think it's such a good point that is a great bridge. because that is going to tell you everything they think. And if they can support their political ideology, then they're telling you everything that's important to them. And then you can
Start to know them.
Start to know them and bridge, because we're not going to these people, hitting them in the face with, you have to be saved. We are trying to get the bridge that gives us that opportunity. And I think that's terrific.
Just as an aside, we were at symposium. You were at symposium this week, last week. There was an excellent paper by a guy named John Bauer, and it was on the whole church and state thing and how Christians navigate that strange space. But so anyway, it's on the Wisconsin Lutheran Seminary page if that's your thing. Great paper on it. Mike?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, I appreciate Pastor and his knowledge of politics.
Maybe I'll just say read that paper that's on the seminary. It really
That's
well
where I'm
discusses
getting my
this.
point of view, is from a seminary papers. Pastor says we're citizens of two kingdoms.
Yes.
You know those papers probably. I've read many seminary papers, and we are failing as a church. Not pastor, because he's got the skills there, but it's hard on a pastor if we don't support in a loving way, everything out of love, of course.
Yeah. All right. Let's move on. So, who determines if that unwelcoming issue is changed? What challenge does that represent then?
Well, if it changes something that we've been doing, then you have all these people that, why are we changing this? This is the way we've always done it. Culture.
The simple thing is, you don't know until you ask. You don't know what to change, because those who aren't feeling welcomed aren't coming to you and saying, yeah, no, if you did this, I'd feel a whole lot more welcome.
Yeah, so that to have your finger on the pulse of what is making visitors requires you to engage people in some way.
And I think the biggest thing is you can't please everybody. So you change it for this person, now that person's offended. There's no way you're gonna ever do things and not offend somebody.
You can't trip over yourself trying to, I used the hyperbolic example yesterday, like if somebody wanted their pastor to dress up with a clown and put a red nose on, does that mean, okay, that would make them feel more comfortable, we might do it? Not necessarily. But everything still in the mind of how am I serving God's people, and also making this all accessible to people who are new to here. Pastor Rodell?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think a lot of times the impulse of people is to say, we've got to change X, which is the thing that I find might be the thing that is turning off a visitor. And it's like, I, from my perspective, want the church to change this thing. Well, like Karen said, if the church changes this thing, then the church has 6 other people over here who are mad when we just please these 6 people. And so, if each person simply says, what is the thing that I can personally do? And I don't have to make the church change. I can just be cognizant of this, I can be aware of this, and I can do what I can do to make people feel welcome. And the reality is, you know, when you join a group, there's going to be things that are new to you. And some of those things may be uncomfortable at first, but they're worth learning. And other things are needless roadblocks, right? And leadership of churches always has to wrestle with that and struggle with that. Is you know, having a robe and an alb, is that a thing that elevates this and makes it transcendent, or is it a needless roadblock? And we're going to have the room split 50-50 on that, you know? But, you know what? Like you've said, that's not keeping the church from growing, typically. But if you just go and love the people who are in front of you in every way you know how, that will make the much bigger difference.
Well, and the other thing too, Paul talks about offending the weaker Christian. I feel that if you in your assessment of your Christianity feel you're a stronger Christian, then I think it's okay to acquiesce sometimes to the weaker person. Or the less, maybe the less, I shouldn't say spiritual, but the less involved or integrated person.
Yeah, the one whose sensibilities are less offended.
Right.
I hope what's emphasized here, and I'm going to do a little exercise. It's not just enough to think about removing the things that are unwelcoming. I also want us to think about this in terms of welcoming people. And I want to tell you a little story. I'm going to tell you 2 stories, in fact. Young man dating a young woman they've been dating for a couple of months, and she invites him over for Thanksgiving dinner. And so he goes over to her house, and the girlfriend greets him at the door. And they're running late on dinner, and so the girlfriend and the mom, they say, hey, we're running behind on dinner, but the game's on and the TV down in the basement. And so he steps in and he kind of looks around. He hears the TV down in the basement, and he finds his way down there. And her brothers, of the guy the girl that she's dating, her brothers, they're down there, and the dad's down there, and like, oh, hey, seat over there. And so they watch the rest of the game. Derek Carr, of course, throws an interception to end the game. The Saints. I just wanted to make sure everybody else caught it. I want to make sure they heard it too. So he throws an interception to end the game, and they're called up to dinner, and they're sitting around the dinner table. He's sitting next to his girlfriend. Not a lot of conversation is coming his way. And then at the end of the night, they're saying, hey, it's great to have you here. And the girlfriend walks the guy to the door. He's got to go to visit another friend. So that's story number one. Story number two, same guy, dating the girl, comes to visit for Thanksgiving. And he's greeted at the door by his girlfriend, her mom, and the dad. And same thing, though, they're running behind. The dad says, hey, John, would you help me set the dinner table here? And so they spend a little time setting up the dinner table. He's helping out. And he says, hey, the game is on. The Packers-Saints game is on after this. You want to go down into the den and we'll watch it. And on the way, they take a stroll past some of the pictures in the house. And he's like, yeah, he points out a few family members, some of the uncles that are going to be there as well. They go down into the den, and when he gets down there, the brothers who are down there and the uncles that are watching the game already, they're like, hey, John, we heard you were coming. What can I get you to drink? One guy goes over and makes, of course, makes a nice old fashioned for him. One of the other brothers said, no, sit right here. So they watch the game. Of course, Derek Carr throws an interception to end the game again. So they're called up to dinner, and they gather around the dinner table. And this guy, John, he happens to be going to school for engineering, and so two of the uncles happen to be engineers as well. And they're like, oh, hey, could we switch places with you? And so there's this great conversation about engineering and the connections that they have. Then at the end of the night, the mom, the dad, and the girlfriend, they all walk him to the, or no, even before that, at the dinner table, he says a prayer and says, Lord, thank you for bringing John into our midst today. It was so great to have him. At the end of the dinner, the mom, the dad, and the girlfriend walk him to the door and say, we're having Christmas in December. We would love it if there's any way that you could come back. He leaves. What's the difference between those two stories?
The second one is way more welcoming.
Was he unwelcome in the first story?
He wasn't.
Welcome versus welcomed.
Yes.
Yes.
Right? He was welcome at their house. The second story was they went out of their way to welcome him. That they were welcoming, right? They were very intentional, right? And how does that relate oftentimes to the way in which churches can be? Making the connection, right? I don't think, in fact, some people say our congregations are not friendly. I don't think so, because oftentimes you have little groups of friends. You're being friendly with one another, right? Like you go and see your friends at church and you're like, hey, and you have these little huddles of friends. That's friendly. You're being friendly. But, right? And what's that?
But you're not welcome.
Yeah, and it's not like we would ever put a big sign out on the door that say, visitors not welcome. We welcome visitors.
Visitors almost as cliques.
They do. And I don't want to put too much shame on the people. It's a wonderful thing when the church comes together and spends time with its friends, right? Let us not give up meeting together, because meeting together is an encouragement. It's fun to see your brothers and sisters in the faith. There's encouragement that comes from that. And we welcome anybody that would come through our door. But that's different.
So it was something we were talking about earlier, where you say, I'm happy to address any of your questions. Sounds like a platitude. And I was just thinking about it this morning, whereas instead you say, I really enjoy, if you have any questions, to try to help explain it. Because one is, like I said, just a platitude, if you have any questions, let me ask. And the other is, I really like explaining this. If you have any questions, please come and see me. And that's the difference between those two stories, I think. One.
Yep. One is very intentional about in what areas might you feel uncomfortable. I want to make sure that you know, not just that you're welcome here, but that we want you here. And we want to make you feel comfortable. And I'm going to do things to make that happen, not just passively sit back and say, you're welcome here.
Yeah.
Right? So let's talk about this. We're going to do a little exercise in just a little bit. We're going to divide you up into 3 groups like we did yesterday. I'm going to have you go to the calendars, the 1, 2, 3 calendars, the 3 groups. And what we're going to do is we're going to think about this whole thing in terms of welcoming people. And very briefly, what does accountability have to do with our congregation being welcoming and creating a sense of belonging?
If it isn't a priority, it's not going to get done.
And whose job is it? Greeters? It's the greeter's job.
Right.
It's the greeter's job.
No one wants to take accountability, they want to give it to you.
Yeah. And you hear this very often. People say, like, ours is such it's an unfriendly church. You can do something about that. Right? You can go out and welcome people instead of just complaining about everybody else. You can do that. What about this? How can the way we look at change impact our congregation's ability to be welcoming and create a sense of
the most difficult thing on the planet.
It is. It's hard for a bunch of old Lutherans. Yes, that's true. It is. But I want you to keep these 2 things in mind, and what I'm going to ask you to do, I'm going to divide you again. We'll just do this for 10 minutes. So you're going to be,
We're good.
paper number 3, you're going to be on the sheet number 2 up there, you're going to be on the first sheet. I'm going to give each of you a marker to use. So one of you will be the secretary, you're going to have to vote somebody the secretary. Somebody's going to be the secretary. Hold on, I have a few more directions before we do this though. What you're going to do, real quick, change and accountability. The Apostle Paul already says, I will change whenever necessary for the sake of the gospel. And who does he say should do it? The greeters?
Yep.
Myself, how would you describe Paul as he talks here, both in terms of change and accountability for the sake of the gospel?
Very self-centered.
Very self-centered, yeah. I, me, I. Right.
We should make it about Paul in this case because he's,
in terms of responsibility.
Self-reflective.
Yeah, he's saying, it's nobody else's responsibility. I will be a Greek to the Greeks and a Jew to the Jew. That's on me. So, with that same zeal and other person-mindedness, I'm going to have you go to the calendars. One more thing before you go there. What I'm going to ask you to do, just so that we keep this in a particular frame, I want you to think about some ideas. And this is just, go ahead and brainstorm. There's no wrong ideas. I want you to generate how we can generate a sense of belonging here for first-time guests, for reoccurring guests that have been attending the 6 to 8 weeks, for new member class participants. And again, I realize this is just the Sunday morning experience. We could talk about this in so many other ways, but we're going to limit it just to this for now. So go to your calendars and generate as many of these things as you can in the next 10 minutes. And then I also need a timekeeper. Come up with as many as you can, and then I'll tell you when you've got about 3 minutes left, and then pick the best 3. It can be the best 3 from one of each of these categories, or all from this category, or whatever. But the best 3 that you think we could implement as a congregation.
Okay, first time guest.
I think he's purposely ignoring us.
Yeah, he doesn't want to do it. That's a lot of material.
What can we do?
3 minutes to a first time go.
Well, what are we supposed to do?
No, I have first name this.
First time guest.
Shake hands?
Smile.
I just recommend.
Right. Green.
And in there they put out cones on the signs.
Yeah.
I would say just be more cognizant, if you are talking to your buddies, like, just say, oh, you know what, there's somebody that kind of looks like they have never been here before, and you can even take all of you over there,
Yes.
you know, say, let's go meet that person if you're uncomfortable doing it yourself.
Yeah.
Just don't scare them when you approach them, right?
Yeah.
Right, yeah, don't surround them like a pack of sharks, like.
Hi, we're here to greet you.
You can guide them through where things are.
Where they should hang their coats if because they might have been missed by a greeter, and so.
Yeah, because we heard yesterday, they said they can't really.
Exactly, yep.
I actually thought that was a good idea. I didn't know they existed.
And you know what, this might be something that people aren't really comfortable with, but you could say, you know, when you everyone would like to sit with them. You know, you could sit with visitors.
How about you, Tom? I think
I feel like Dan may have like lowered the shoulder.
Shoulder
He
drop.
played football.
Yeah.
Get the greeter out of the way.
I'll just have to say they should.
You get it. Yeah, you get it. Now, so any other?
Longer term.
Right.
What's that?
Remember people, I think we should start.
I know.
So on number 2, when we give them a name tag, we're gonna give them.
Everybody.
Yeah, and we follow up by calling
Reoccurring
them
guests,
a
anything more for
visiting agent.
reoccurring
Come
guests.
in here, do we have people to do that?
So we gotta wrap this up in a minute, yeah, 30 seconds.
What's our top?
We gotta debrief this. Okay, a minute left. All right, do you have 3 that you've chosen?
Suggestions?
If you're ready from the list, that are like top ones? 3-star, 3 check marks? Okay, I'll ask one from each group to be the representative to present the list, so take the list down. Larry's gonna share with all of you the 3 best ones that you thought, that you came up with that maybe you could do. Yeah, turn it that way.
So,
That will be Vanna White.
we felt for the first time in the greeter thing was important, and maybe have an information table where the greeters could direct them to that, or greeters stand at that, so they can find out where the coat room is, the bathrooms are, and get more information than just good morning to you.
Yeah.
Okay. Another one we liked was the 5-minute rule after the service. Is like, don't go to your clicky clicks right away. Find that face that I don't know who that person is or that person. I gotta go make a connection with somebody new. In the first 5 minutes right after and the pastor would have to say this, right after the service is over. And then get your donuts or whatever. Then the last one was the name tag thing. I don't know, people are, and Doug made a good point. Visitors might not feel comfortable with that, but maybe offer it to them. Hey, we find this helpful, that we have a tag on, you know who we are, and then if you would like one, we can get one.
Maybe the greeters could be close to that table and provide the information. I'd like to offer it to you if possible.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah, so it's a little more inclusive that, where your greeters are doing more than just morning.
Okay.
They're actually assisting with a lot of things.
Thank you for your work. Gary, would you mind presenting yours?
Good. If I can say it.
Sure.
Okay, this first time visitors, we said, help meet other groups, or one of your friends or something.
So Dan just made a good comment. To your credit, the congregation, there was a Vern here today that not only did he go greet somebody, the visitor, but he also pulled a bunch of other people and said, go, that guy's visiting, go talk to him. So awesome.
Yeah. We also said a guide, to where their jacket closet is, bathrooms and stuff. Visitor table, where the cry room is. The layout of the church, maybe a little bit about the school. We don't hear much about the school. Even, I think even members, we don't hear as much as maybe we used to hear about the school.
Okay. We got one more at the bottom?
And one more at the bottom was invite them to Bible class. If the people that have been here for a couple of weeks, maybe they haven't started Bible class or feel comfortable going in there and not knowing anybody, just invite them to go in and sit with you.
Yeah, just that invitation to connect to the Word. Awesome. Thank you. And Bill?
All right.
You want me to hold it?
No, I'll come up.
Okay. If I can hold it, you can point the stuff out.
Oh, sure.
There we go.
Well, are we covering them all, or just?
Just the ones, your highlighted ones.
The highlighted ones, we have unfortunately plagiarism to report here. Larry and our thunder was stolen on that 5-minute rule for members. You know, if we all just stick around, it's not asking a lot, 5 minutes, like you guys are saying. Just make an effort to stick around, and look. Our members should be willing to meet and greet visitors. Name tags is kind of integrated with everything. I think it's been a theme here this week. Having done the name tags myself, people have given me feedback and really like the idea of name tags. I don't know how we do it for visitors because we don't want them to feel singled out. They kind of want to blend in initially, but those that have come here for 6 to 8 weeks, we're probably like, man, we've seen you. Gosh, I can't remember your name, but why don't we're doing name tags here as members? Can we give you one or something like that? And then the last one, when we have new information classes, some of us that grew up in the Synod schools, we had a lot of that. Those of us that are, more used to the faith and doctrines and so forth should try to attend new information classes that pastor conducts, I think, because it makes people feel more comfortable. They get to meet somebody that's an actual member that can, integrate them into the campus here, so to speak. And, it's always good to get a refresher. We forget ourselves all the things.
I just have a comment. These are all great ideas, everything that's written. Is there some way that we can keep these? And when we
Yes.
do a wrap-up, to let our
Surprise.
members know
Surprise.
everything that has happened?
So I'm going to encourage you to keep these, and who's the evangel? I think it's my dad and my aunt or some nepotism. Oh yeah, you are. So I would encourage you to keep these. By the way, so thank you for your group. Who thinks if these are pretty simple things? It's not a big thing to the budget. Not a. Who thinks if you implemented just those things that you listed, that the culture would shift in the congregation? Who thinks that's true?
Oh, yeah.
I think so. Yeah. Awesome. I'm going to have you for 2 minutes just do a little journaling. What things in our congregation might be viewed as unwelcoming by guests? What can I do to address these? Who will share just one I will statement that was generated out of this? Who will share?
I'm not gonna give both of them. I will wear my name tag if we have one, because ordinarily I wouldn't. And I will stick around for 5 minutes and see somebody out in the chat room. I think it's
That's
pretty
awesome.
simple.
Yeah, that is. You're not. Yeah, no, thank you. That's excellent. That's excellent. All right, let's. If you've got a little bit of writing to do, go ahead and do that. but otherwise, let's make our way into the sanctuary again, where Pastor Recker will begin with the last session. Thank you.